Hi, my name is Braden, and this is the YouTube channel Braybay Outdoors. You can also find me at braybay.com. This video is going to be about my plan to build a James Warham designed Tiki 30 catamaran. Before I get into the specifics, I wanted to outline how I got to where I am now and my rationale for deciding to build a catamaran to sail around the world instead of purchasing a cheaper monohull that would get me going on my way faster. A little over 5 years ago, I went on a cruise. I really enjoyed being out on the ocean, and after that event I spent a lot of time researching ways to travel the world by boat cheaply and with considerations for the environment. I came across sailing after watching the movie Maiden Trip and fell in love with the sport. I made a 10-year goal of saving money, taking lessons, and purchasing a few boats to sail on, slowly incrementing up in size to the boat I will sail around the world in. I followed this goal strictly, and I'm now on my second boat, a West White Potter 15. However, over the period of the last 3 years, I started building canoes of my own design in my garage, and have also fallen in love with boat building. Now that I have experience building 3 small boats, I yearn for building a much larger boat. I now know deep inside of me that I cannot feel accomplished if I do not build the boat I sail around the world in. To others, this may sound like insanity, and I know it will receive a lot of criticism from those around me while I pursue the endeavor, but I know it's the right thing to do, and I'll have fun doing it. I am, however, honest with myself, and should a major constraint come my way that would otherwise delay me for a long period of time from completing the project, I will just go out and purchase something like a Contessa 26 to sail around the world in. I'm working hard to meet my 10-year deadline and save money and build, which means I have 5 more years at hand. I will get into the financials of the boat once I'm more settled on the budget, but for now I'm just going to go over the design, changes to the design I'm considering, and my timeline. So there's a lot of debate in the sailing world between monohulls and catamarans. I won't go into all the specifics, but I have read a lot of forums over the last few years, and I believe both are viable options. I decided to build a catamaran mainly because I wanted something unique looking and fun to sail, and most importantly easy to build and transport in the limited space I have available to me during construction. As for my choice of designer, there's really only a few catamaran designers in this size range. The top would be Richard Woods and James Warham. I considered building a Richard Woods Gypsy or Romany, and I also considered another design by the name of Mike Waller for his Coral Sea 35 design. I ended up choosing the Tiki 30 as it's the smallest Warham catamaran I felt comfortable taking around the world. I know smaller designs have done it, but I would really like the added length for comfort and the ability to have crew on board. My main reasoning for choosing this design over the others is 3 reasons: small size constraints, dismountability, and proven seaworthiness. So the Tiki 30 is the only design of the 4 that I was considering that could be built within the height constraints of my parents' garage, where I'll likely be building. Should I choose to build elsewhere or in the backyard, it's also convenient as I can dismount it and put it on a trailer. I know the Woods and Waller cats can be made in separate parts and joined at the launch, but at the same time, I also really like the look of the deck-mounted beams on the Tiki 30, and I might one day put it in a shipping container or something like that. Finally, the Tiki range of designs by James Warham has a proven track record around the world. I've found a few examples of Tiki 30s crossing oceans or pursuing intense trips. I have not, however, found any of it circumnavigating, but I've heard of many Tiki 26s and the infamous Tiki 21 that have done ocean crossings, and in this case, the Tiki 21 did a circumnavigation. So overall, I'm not too concerned, and with a good drogue and watertight hatches, I'm confident the Tiki 30 can be put to the test. So next I'm going to go over the modifications I'm considering for the design. Keep in mind I only got my plans a month ago, and I'm not starting construction until January 2021. So if anyone has recommendations that will not push the limits on my building time or change any key structural details for the boat, I'm all ears. I've been doing a lot of research on what has made cats flip in the past and what has worked on boats to make them safer at sea. Another major aspect of sailing I've considered is the ease of repair at sea or in isolated areas. As a result, I'm making 5 major changes to the boat and considering 2 other changes at the moment. So please let me know your thoughts on these changes. Before I go into it, I just want to clarify that I know all these changes I'm pursuing have been done in the past successfully, not necessarily on Warham catamarans. First off, Around the boat, I'm adding flat Contessa 26 style hatches to the port and starboard hulls, as well as the center pod. These hatches will be hinged with a strong seal that I've yet to work out, but being flat makes it a lot easier, and they'll be watertight. Not only will they be watertight, but as you can see in the photo I've drawn on, they'll also add standing headroom underneath them in both hulls while avoiding too much windage. Compared to the hatches set out in the plan, these will not cover as much deck space, allowing for larger solar panels. The drawback I can see with this design is hitting your head on the top of the hatch when trying to enter the boat. The hatch has worked on the Contessa 26, and I also made a cardboard life-size example to test out. I really don't think it will be an issue. For the forward hatches on the boat, I will either purchase some used watertight marine hatches, such as Lumars, or build a Maurice Griffiths style hatch. Secondly, I will be building the deck pod that comes as an addition to the plans. It's my belief that the length of the deck pod takes away from the open deck concept of the Tiki 30 too much, and I'll be shortening it by about a foot and a half or so. This means the pod will only have a single or double berth, but not two single berths. I think the trade-off is worth having more space in the cockpit, and I have the plans. It's relatively easy to make the modification. Thirdly, in my pursuit of environmental cleanliness, ease of repair, and use in isolated places, I've decided to go with a solar-powered electric setup as my auxiliary source of propulsion. This will always be second to the sails, obviously. I'll carry around 600 to 900 watts of solar panel and a wind generator or two, but I'm not familiar with the watt size of the wind generator I can fit on the boat yet. For the battery banks, I'm looking at recycling used laptop batteries and pulling the 18650 cells out. Be a 48 volt 200 amp hour battery just for the motor in one hull, and a 200 amp hour 12 volt bank in another hull. And that would just be for my 12 volt systems. For the electric motor, it will be a 5 kilowatt motor on a modified outboard situated in the same spot as the plans call for. The drawbacks I can see of this modification is that it severely limits my motoring distance. Where a gas motor could go for days on a desired speed, the electric motor could only go for a matter of hours at the same speed before emptying the battery bank. So why would I pursue this? I think electric needs to be considered more like a paddle than a gas motor, so they're not really in the same category, but electric will force me to sail more, be more self-sufficient in isolated regions, and it will also be easier to repair at sea and less likely to break down. Lastly, it'll be a fun winter engineering project. However, I'm not without my doubts of the cost of the system, so should it not fit into my budget, I won't pursue an electric system for the boat. And I also have to consider the weight restraints, but if I do pursue the electric system, I may add a small Honda 2200 generator for emergency purposes. I already own a gas outboard, so I might just be taking that for the dinghy anyways to save costs, so it's really a toss-up on the electrical system. So fourthly, major modification I'll be adding to the boat, rear metal archway that has a few purposes. Primarily, it supports either two wind generators or a wind generator and a radar. The combination I chose is all based on costs and the perceived benefits. Secondly, the archway will act as a small crane to bring up my dinghy. The archway will be mounted on a lightweight rear beam. The extra beam is not called for in the plans, but most Tiki 30s I've seen photos of tend to have a light rear beam, and sometimes a forward beam as well that supports the forestay instead of the bridle setup. Another major modification I'm going to be making is putting a head in the starboard hull. This is an approved modification. It actually comes with the plans, so I don't have to put much mental effort into figuring out those changes. It involves moving one of the bulkheads a few feet aft and moving the hatch a few inches forward. For the bulkhead, I'll also be making a watertight door in it, not just to keep the room watertight, but more to keep out smells of the head, as there is a bunk right in front of this area. Now, moving the hatch on the starboard hull forward a bit reduces the symmetry of the hulls. I really want it to look symmetrical looking top down, so what I'm going to be doing is making the hatches on both hulls a little bit wider so that they're in the same position looking top down. So what that's going to result in is a little handle or shelf on the right side of the hatch. It just makes the illusion that they're symmetrical. If that doesn't make sense, there is an attached diagram. It's just because I have to move the starboard hatch a few inches forward to accommodate the head. So those are all the major changes I'll be making to the design. There are a few minor changes I'll be making. I'm going to be putting 2 of the Warham wind vanes on the boat. I'll also have a ST-1000 autopilot. For navigation purposes, I'll be using Open Captain with an RTL SDR radio receiver for AIS. I'm also going to be having an SSB radio on board with the equipment necessary for sail mail, as well as a satellite phone, a small water maker, etc. For the 2 changes I'm considering on but not yet sold on, I was recently reading the book Cost Effective Cruising, in which a sailing couple, Lynn and Larry Party, put out the argument for hank-on jibs as opposed to a jib furler. I can see the benefits of the hank-on jib, and I'll probably carry an extra jib on board, but being able to stay in the cockpit and reef the jib feels like a really good trade-off, despite the extra parts for the jib furler. The other change is a modification to the Warham wing sail rig, which is default on the TK30. It's of my belief that despite the benefit of being able to easily drop and reef the sail in all sailing angles, it's hard to reef, and especially hard to reef if you have a cockpit cover. If I were to change the design, I would probably end up putting a boom on the sail and getting rid of the portion that wraps around the mast. But I'm not sure how that would affect the tension on the mast and if it needed to warrant a change in the shrouds, for example, so I really don't think it's worth putting my effort into unless someone with knowledge on the matter could guide me. There are Warham wing sails on almost all the Warhams out sailing now, so it's a really tested design and I'm not too worried. My main gripe is how I would reef it with a bimini, but I'm not intending on putting one of those on the boat unless I feel the need to have it after I've started sailing. So that's about it for the changes. Now I'm just going to go over a broad timeline for building. I intend on working full-time and saving money while building the boat. I've worked full-time while building the 2 of my canoes out of 3. I didn't find myself too tired or restricted. In fact, I built the second one in a really short amount of time. I'm young and I can put in the hard work, and my working situation is subject to change and my timeline's also subject to change. I'm not too worried about financials or my timeline, but I really want to get out there as soon as I can. I think it's really important to pursue these dreams while I'm young and fit enough to handle the rugged lifestyle I'm going to impose on myself. I definitely intend on taking breaks and getting working holiday visas while sailing to keep the cash flow going. Right now I'm in university and will likely be graduating at the end of next year in geography. I really love studying my field, but I need to focus on getting into construction mode as soon as possible. Sailing around the world will teach me a lot more about geography than sitting in a class. That means I have 1 year to get my timeline solidified and get a job nearby. So during the next year, I'll be solidifying my plans, starting the purchase of materials and hunting for used parts. As well, in the summer of 2020, I will be building the dinghy for the boat. It'll just be a little refresher course for the project I'm about to tackle. Once I'm done school, I will go into the workplace and start construction of the boat in my afternoons and weekends. I will be taking a day off every week to relax, probably a Sunday or a Saturday. The construction will be ongoing until September 2023. I will be splitting years into 3 4-month groups with broad plans for each 4-month segment. So that is 8 4-month segments I have to finish the boat. The major restriction on time I will have is winters. I am in Canada, so the first 4 months of each year I'll be restricted to my use of epoxy indoors. So I'll probably just be using this time to flesh out the small details of the electrical systems and the rigging on board. In terms of video making, I'll try to record as much as possible, mostly so that when I eventually sell the boat when I'm done sailing around the world, I can have video proof of quality construction. I have no timeline for how often I'll upload videos, but I'll try once or twice a month to upload something. I think it will be a fun break from building to make some videos. If you enjoy sailing videos, I'll be posting lots of Potter 15 videos. For those who have made it through my long-winded essay about the boat, I thank you dearly. I'll leave you off with a recommendation to an article I found online a few years ago that has stuck with me since. It's called What People Don't Talk About When Going Off-Grid or Homesteading, Well-Meaning Critics, by Pure Living for Life. This is a great article for people who want to pursue something new, different, unique, off the beaten path. You will always come across people who don't understand where your motivations for your dreams lie, and feel the need to remind you of the struggles you will face moving forward. These people are called well-meaning critics and are the reason a lot of people do not follow their dreams. It is essential to your mental health and determination moving forward with your dreams that you identify when someone is being a well-meaning critic out of fear and not a critic out of a want to help you proceed with your goals. The knowledge I gained from the article has certainly helped me moving forward, and I hope it helps anyone who's considering unique ideas as well. Who knows, maybe you'll also build a boat one day. I sure hope you do. Thank you. Until next time.